So this has reverted to a meeting because I tried to get in on my Mac and it wouldn't let me do it.
Huh,
So I am now on the big computer, but we'll fix it.
yeah.
I can't hear you.
You cannot?
Say it again.
Can you hear me?
Now I can.
Oh,
I was like,
okay, let's do this again. Okay.
we're gonna pause the recording.
Hey, Latanya.
Hey.
I just finished watching the video that you did with that background.
Did you?
Yes, it was pretty impressive.
Thank you.
I'm still working on mine.
I miss
I
basketball.
Emily, I can't help thinking that you'd be the perfect person to do some TikTok shorts
Yes,
because you're so out there when you talk. It's wonderful, you know.
yeah,
I don't know if I can
I'm
do that. I could do, besides most TikTok, users are younger than my kids anyway, so.
it takes time to learn TikTok, and I don't have that many followers actually. So it's like, yeah. So I'm trying, but it's hard to keep up with the young people.
I have
I
0 followers because I don't, I guess I have an account, but I haven't used it, so.
yeah,
Anyway,
there's a learning curve when it comes to using social media. Even with Instagram, that was a learning curve too.
yeah.
Facebook I'm most familiar with, so yeah.
But they also morph. They're constantly changing. So even just keeping up with one is more time
Mhm.
than I want to invest in it. But I am more than I want to. So
Yes.
anyway, yeah, we had about 11 people signed up. So about 11. You say about 10, but 11, I think. But I figured we just get started. This is our first, we're going to have a series of these town hall meetings or presentations or, different formats, all on Zoom about Prop 1 so that people can come and get a sense of what it is, what it will do, what we think it's going to do, what they're not saying if it's going to do, which is the case with all legislation and propositions. There are always intended and unintended consequences with these things. And so we're going to look at it from a variety of points of view, hopefully, have a good discussion, and then, talk about a large part of it is just about, why we are Californians against Proposition 1 and why we think people should reject this and go back to the drawing board later. So Proposition 1 is a statewide ballot initiative, and it has really two basic aspects. It rewrites much of the Mental Health Services Act, which was approved by voters in 2004. And as part of that, it moves money from direct mental health services to other programs, substance use disorder, independent of mental health diagnoses. Now, the original Prop 63, the Mental Health Services Act, does cover substance use disorder, but only when it's actually co-occurring with a mental health diagnosis or issue. That is to say, if you are an alcoholic, it didn't cover your services. But if you're an alcoholic and also suffer from depression, which I think a lot of alcoholics, if not most, do, then the treatment is covered under the Mental Health Services Act. Housing interventions, and that's kind of a loose term, which we'll talk about later. And then 180 million per year to go into the Department of Healthcare Services for what they're calling oversight and accountability measures. And then the other half of the initiative is a $6.3 billion bond for housing and mental institutions. They call it beds and locked involuntary facilities. The bond was initially written by the legislator to be a veterans housing bill, but it was repurposed for this. And there is still a little bit of money in there for veterans housing, but the bulk of it is going to build basically new mental health institutions. I do want to point out that a lot of people think of Prop 1 and they think about last year's Prop 1, which was about abortion rights. That's not me. That's not us. I got a number when we first started publicizing our opposition. I got a whole lot of nasty grams from people saying, "What? You're against choice?" I said, no, that's not this initiative. So that was last year. Okay. So in terms of the money and generally how this was split up, these charts were not made by me. I believe these were done by, I know I got them from Mental Health America, but they're being used widely as pretty much the dollars and cents analysis of where the money goes. And on the left is a pie chart that shows where the money goes from the Mental Health Services Act. By the way, while we're talking about Mental Health Services Act, we probably all know in this room, but that is a Prop 63, but from back in 2004, it's the millionaire's tax, where individuals who make more than $1 million a year are taxed an additional 1% on their income taxes, their state income taxes. So that has gotten us mental health services quite a bit of money over the years. I think since it was passed, it's been, I don't know, something like $30 billion, which is great. And that was split up as indicated on the chart there. Full service partnerships, and then non-full service partnerships, community services and supports, prevention and early intervention, basically the upstream services for mental health. And then a small piece of that, 5%, went to innovation programs. So the primary changes are that on the right one, under the Prop 1 paradigm, there's no set aside for innovations. On the top one, you see it's kind of melded into the non-FSP, community supports and services, but there's no designated money for those innovation projects. Housing is added, and by added, I mean added to the pie. There's no additional money going in for housing. It's just taken out of the other aspects. 5%, which I mentioned before, that's 180 million, give or take, a year for the state to do what they call oversight and accountability. There is already an oversight and accountability commission, but this is going to go to the Department of Healthcare Services to kind of be the oversightness. And then the full service partnerships, the percentage has been reduced. Now they're putting a lot of emphasis on the fact that full service partnerships are great, but they're still reducing the amount. They're kind of selling this based on, oh, we're going to put a lot of money into full service partnerships, but that's actually been reduced. So that's the basics. There are a lot of resources. I'm going to go back to this at the end, but this is the website for the No on Prop 1. A lot of these two here are summaries of the bills. The legislator passed two bills that became Prop 1. One is SB 326 by Susan Eggman, which was to rewrite the Mental Health Services Act. And then 531 was the bond measure that was originally for veterans housing and got repurposed for this. So those two basically put the ballot measure on the ballot. These three here, and I'm gonna paste this into the chat window so everybody can have them and copy and paste them or whatever. These three are basically just news reports. CBS, ABC, forgot what the other one was. And then the last one is just a kind of a millennial or Generation Z version of what happens to the homeless when they go through involuntary commitment. Anyway, I'll put those in at the very end as well. Okay, so what are the issues surrounding this? Well, there are a lot. There are a lot of questions, a lot of concerns, and a lot of things that we see as being very problematic. Our basic issues here that I've listed out there, there are actually 2 slides of this, but first, follow the money. And I basically talked about the money, that $1 billion would be annually reduced for mental health services. That's the community support and services that we talked about. Now, the 1 billion annually is kind of a loose number because it's a percentage. The first year, there would be about $1 billion of reduction. Each year, though, the amount of money going into this millionaire's tax, this mental health services fund, it depends on the economy, how much the billionaires are making this year. And when the economy is in a reduced state, when we're getting less tax money in, there's less money coming in. So there might be less of a reduction, but then there'll also be the overall reduction in total money going into it. The 880 million per year going into the DHCS, the elimination of innovation funding, which I talked about. My sort of explanation of that is that's where the modernization really happens. When the local areas, when the community-based organization are doing these projects to figure out new ways of serving mental health services are created. Now, while those aren't going to be completely eliminated, in some counties they will, because they're going to be losing so much money. It doesn't say we have to eliminate them, but it takes away the earmarked money for that. And then the other money is the amount of money that the prison guards, real estate developers, and others with a financial stake have been contributing to the governor's war chest in order to promote this initiative. Second is loss of local control. The Prop 63, the original MHSA, was designed so that money would go to the counties, and the counties would would provide some services by the county departments of mental health, would get contract with local community behavioral health agencies, and also with community organizations that would do specific projects. So the control of that money is largely based on the counties and their MHSA plans each year or each 3 years. And it's really every year, but there are 3-year cycles for most of them. And then they would determine within their county or their communities what was really needed. Obviously, the needs of Mono County are different from the Tenderloin in San Francisco, or South Central LA, et cetera. Prop 1 is designed to take that control to the state bureaucracy under the DHCS, which is controlled by the governor, or top down. And the implication of this is a bureaucracy which will control what happens at the local level. I call it one-size-fits-all governance. Basically, my concept of that is that the state may have a general concept of what's good across all of the counties, but they really don't know what's happening at the local basis. And the implication is that they will tend to evaluate what's being done with the MHSA, or they're renaming it the BHSA, Behavioral Health Services, rather than MHSA. And they did that because they're taking a lot of money away from it for non-mental health. So they're not going to call it the Mental Health Services Act. They're going to call it the Behavioral Health Services Act. Next 3. Prop 1 will move treatment focus from upstream to downstream. The current programs currently funded focus more on prevention of serious mental illness rather than the downstream services or the interventions after someone is already on the street. And the new process strips billions from prevention and early intervention, which basically I just said. I call it the homeless scam. The governor's advertisements really suggest that this is going to solve our housing crisis and take people off the streets. there are intents to do some of that, but where they're taking them from off the streets is primarily not to actual housing. It's and they're admitting that this is basically for involuntary hospital beds. And that's not a housing solution, that is an appearance solution. What little this would do would only institutionalize more and more Californians. And they advertise this will help veterans, and some of the money is earmarked for veterans housing, but very little. The expectation is 10% possibly might go to assist veterans with that, but that's not absolutely designated. It's certainly implied though. And then the accountability, which I spoke a little bit about already. The governor's talking a lot about accountability. We need accountability, and this is going to ensure the voters that we will be using their money properly. And he uses that word a lot. I like this quote. I don't think he knows what it means. Big quote from the Princess Bride movie. The counties will receive huge unfunded mandates and, in fact, very punitive measures if they can't do more with less funding. We've spoken with a number of the counties, and they're really worried about these punitive measures that are being asked and required to do things that really just don't make sense to them. They're being asked to do programs that aren't needed in the county, which is going to take money away from what is needed in the county. And they're really concerned that they're not going to be able to fulfill the expectations that that have been placed upon them, particularly with this new paradigm. And really with accountability, they talk about the counties, but the governors and the authors will be turned out before all the negative effects begin to be seen. We're basically kicking the can down the road in terms of the homeless, in terms of a lot of these issues, while taking credit for modernization for, quite honestly, Newsom's expected presidential campaign, whether it be this year or in 2028. Nothing but political upside for Gavin and nothing but downside for California. The last piece of it was the process that's been happening around this. We use the word peers a lot, and peers are individuals with lived experience of mental health or substance use diagnoses, and they're the ones that are actually being affected. The governor and Senator Eggman and others have said, we're not doing this for us, we're doing that for you. And those you that they're talking about is peers, people who have lived experience of a mental health condition, etc. However, you, doesn't approve of this. That is to say, the people that are the true stakeholders who are going to be affected were left completely out of the process of developing these proposals. And it's not just this one. It actually was the same with the Governor's Care Court initiative and others. When listening sessions were held by the governor's people, the administration, the governor's representatives talked for a few minutes about some of the technicalities and then left the room. They didn't listen. So they didn't want to hear anything from the people who are actually going to be affected by this. And that, I believe, that really created a very flawed process for a very flawed initiative. The governor has not hesitated to bully on this. And it's not just the bully pulpit. We talked with a lot of legislators and legislative staff about his proposals, including these, and they've really revealed great discomfort with it. They said, "Hey, I'm sorry, but we're not going to vote against the governor because the governor will retaliate," and that resulted in almost no effective resistance within the legislature. Now, they're really happy to advertise, hey, this was bipartisan. Republicans and Democrats and everybody supported this while they were basically forced to. And in terms of once it went on the ballot, the governor and his practices have literally threatened nonprofit organizations across the state with retaliation if they do oppose Prop 1. So that's a really bad process for a reasonable debate on what we want to do with our mental health. And then the last minute changes to the bond, AB 531, was strictly designated for voluntary unlocked facilities for people who need this care. And we have a shortage of voluntary unlocked facilities in the state. We need we need more healthcare for people, both physical and mental. But a few days before the passage, this concept was stripped, and now they admit it. Oh yeah, this is for involuntary locked facilities. So there's been a lot of dishonesty around the process as well. And was the timing intentional on this last minute stripping? We think so. They were just trying to blunt the resistance until the last second, and then they could promote the initiative. And the initiative itself is big. Any of you who have seen the voter information pamphlet on this, I mean, there's just reams of paper involved in the process, in the bills and everything else. The original bills were hundreds of pages long, and the initiative is also long and difficult to understand. It's vague. The ballot language doesn't specify how all the money will be used, and especially it does not specify which programs will be cut. And of course, this was strategic because they don't want us to say, see, they're going to cut adult respite centers, or they're going to cut this teenage drop-in center or whatever. They're just saying, well, we're not going to give you the money. It's up to you. And basically, it's incomprehensible. No one I've spoken to outside of the few people within our organizations really understand what it's all about. All right. The campaign itself, governors raised 16 million to promote this. And I'm sure everyone here has seen some of his ads. With any campaign or advertising campaign, there's always misleading. And that's expected. They're going to spin it and they're going to use emotional appeals in order to promote their side of the argument. The governor won't debate with us. He won't. I mean, we've been virtually outside his office, and he and his representatives won't come out and talk with us. So if you can't make your case, you spend millions on glitzy ads that appear to fear and sympathy, not to the real issues. And yes, we all have sympathy for people who are on the streets, but this isn't the answer. Because this is a political pain, Houston doesn't want to face the music. The big lie, if you repeat it enough, people start to believe it. They're repeating it over and over. No programs are going to be cut. We're just cutting $1 billion from them, and then you're supposed to do the program without the $1 billion, I suppose. I'm not sure how that works mathematically, but they say it over and over. And so I believe that, as I said, most campaigns are full of spin and half-truths, but this one really has crossed the line into actual lies. Okay, that's my basic summary. We are no on Prop 1, that we organized this. I wanted to try to give you all resources to kind of get a sense of where we are, why we're opposing it, and kind of open the floor to what questions, concerns, if anyone's in the room who believes that we're off the mark, we'd love to hear that. But we're open for discussion. I'm going to post these resources into the chat window if I can, because there it is. Okay, there we go. Okay, so there's the links. It's just a bunch of gobbledygook, but hopefully you'll be able to copy them and paste them, or else click on them if you want to save them for later. Very good. Okay, so I'd like to open it up for discussion. Any comments, questions, whatever? What
I
do you
have a question. I have lots of questions, Paul. So
Okay.
I've been doing my reading of the voter guide, and it's been saying, I saw that it said, oh, we're going to increase the number of mental health care workers. But does the 68 pages of this booklet, like of proposed law, even explain how they're going to recruit more mental health care worker? Because my understanding is that right now there's a shortage. I think I heard you say earlier, like, we have a shortage of social workers, we have a shortage of healthcare and mental health care workers because like we just experienced the pandemic, and so we've burned them out. Like maybe they don't want to work in healthcare or mental health care because they were traumatized from being first responders. And then when you have when you don't have a full team doing all the tasks that need to be done within the healthcare system, like an ER or just whatever healthcare system, you're the services are going to be more lacking of quality care because the ones that are working overtime or burnt out are inflicting emotional pain onto their patients and not treating them with dignity and respect, the patients. So does the bills, does the 68 pages include anywhere like how they're going to increase the number of mental health care workers, how they're going to entice people to work in the system?
That must have been page 120 because I didn't get to it. But no, it really doesn't. And they are talking about, I mean, in the campaign, they're talking about it, it's going to give us more healthcare, mental health clinicians, but nothing in it actually does that. Now, there are a couple bills in the legislature, one in particular that is supposed to provide some scholarships for marriage and family therapists, but that's specifically for not for actually therapeutic use, but for processing people to get into the governor's care court system, which is basically people can be put into this special court system in order to determine whether they should be involuntarily committed or put into some other forced treatment system. But no, that's one of the concerns. And one of the things that they are talking about is, oh, and we're going to improve services, but they're taking money away from services. I have no idea how they're going to actually increase those services when they're taking $1 billion away. Now, it may be that their intent is to find new and innovative ways to increase that workforce, but I'd say let's increase the workforce first and then do something like this, if that is what they really want to do.
Yeah.
I see Richard's got his hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to respond to Emily's question regarding the workforce. Currently, innovation dollars is being used with MHSA dollars with the workforce, basically clinicians, psychiatrists, nurses, etc. So it's basically the professional workforce. It has nothing to do with peer support, peer services, peer programs, which needs to be part of and should be part of, but is not the focus. I agree with the care court issue, even though I have informed the Oversight Commission that MHA's dollars was not intended for care court. Even though they do not want to listen, they turned on deaf ears with my comments, with my feedback, but I have reminded the Oversight Commission that that was not the intent of the dollars to be used for with MHSA dollars. So this whole Proposition 1 is basically a political power grab by Governor Newsom and the leadership. Our state leadership has failed without standing up to him. The Oversight Commission has failed to not standing up to him, but give him his blessing with a letter of concerns of certain issues and concern, but they're still giving him the blessings without standing up against him. It's my understanding the Oversight Commission will be transferred under a state agency instead of being independent, which would put more restrictions on a state agency, what they can and can't do. But this has remained to be seen. My concern is since it's attached to a housing bond, the people are being misled. The commercial is misleading from the first commercial to the last commercial I've seen regarding veterans. Is that it's going to pass because people think it's going to be strictly a housing bond. They don't realize the negative effect on the mental health services piece relating to changes to the MHSA dollars to the behavioral health dollars. They have no clue of the consequences. Housing organizations that strictly focus on housing and affordable housing, some of them are in support in Proposition 1. Some of them are in neutral because of the issue with the mental health dollars that's going to be impacted significantly.
Mhm.
And it's not going to be consumer driven.
Yeah, I'd like to respond just a little bit to the oversight and accountability. Gloria, we'll get to you in a second. Yeah, the Oversight and Accountability Commission has not done a really stellar job, but when the state auditor did an audit of the MHSA, the organization that was most criticized by them was in fact the DHCS and their part in it. And they're the ones being given the extra $180 million. So that's kind of a problem. In terms of the OAC opposing the governor, I think we have to realize that the bulk of the OAC is there at the pleasure of the governor. They really don't have true independence as it is now. And yes, I agree, they will have less independence when they basically have to answer to the DHCS, Department of Healthcare Services, on what they do. I believe it'll basically put all the control of the MHSA under the governor's purview, because the DHCS, of course, is one of the governor's agencies. It is in the executive branch of our government. So I agree with you that honestly, the Oversight and Accountability Commission should, as I like to say, grow a pair and do the right thing. But I don't think it's necessarily something that I would expect them to do, given the fact that they pretty much serve at the pleasure of the governor. Anybody else on that? Because Richard, you said a lot, and it was a lot of a lot of important and good stuff. Anybody else have an insight onto that? If not, we'll go on to Gloria.
Thank
Good.
you. You know, I'm kind of new to a lot of this funding, and you know, I'm not really I'm a community advocate in a very poverty-stricken area. I was familiar because I do try to stay up with the issues of homelessness in our community, attend the continuum of care, you know, try to kind of ask a lot of questions. But the care court has been something that's been on my radar. I understand that there were like 7 counties that got millions of dollars to have pilot programs, and then the other 50 or the rest of the 50 something counties would probably receive a lot less to duplicate some of those efforts. But there it's been, you know, like you said, sometimes there's not a lot of transparency with regards to how they plan to process this, where does it get to where things are forced on people involuntarily. You know I try to keep up with the Western Regional Advocacy Project, WRAP, which actually, you know, I trust, but I just wondered, you know, nothing stands alone. We know that. We also know that there's a deficit in the state budget, or so they tell us. So, you know, all this mix, I'm just, you know, I'm concerned about unfunded mandates for our counties. And then they just let it go. They don't have the money for it, so they're not gonna, you know, do anything about it. So I don't know if you know, there's questions I guess that I have, but I'm not sure if I was clear on what I'm asking for. Thank you.
Thanks, Gloria.
Thank you, Gloria, for your comment and for your advocacy for your community. I am a community member as well in the San Gabriel Valley, and I feel like I'm a minority of minorities because I'm willing to talk to people who work in the mental health care system and trying to understand what the mental health care system looks like from the inside out. Even though I've never actually worked for the system, but I volunteered for the system for LA County Department of Health. I was tokenized by the system. I even used to be a face for the California mental health movement when it used to be called Each Mind Matters. And but you know, it's this system is just so berserk. I went to church about 2 months ago, and the pastor, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. And my cat was going somewhere. I have 5. Anyways, but the church pastor, he said, we're all in over our heads and none of us have life figured out yet. So I feel like these laws are just kind of like, what the heck is all these words, these 68 pages of proposed law? You think when I read through this, I'm like, what? Like, they say they use words like all Californians. I'm like, okay, if you're writing all Californians, well, why are you not fixing the healthcare system, the broken healthcare system that we have right now? Why aren't you using funding for psychiatric mobile crisis teams that was absent on the night of my 5150 caused by 988? Like, what's the use of laws when they're not even, no one's keeping accountable to the current laws? So why are you proposing another crazy one that no one's gonna follow either? So there's no accountability in the system, and I'm so disappointed.
And I think there is a lot of that, the laws are written and then it's almost like something they just put on the shelf. Okay, we're done, and nothing, and it doesn't seem to do that much. Oh, and then when it's not working because it hasn't actually been implemented, they say, oh, we need another law, even though it's maybe to do the same thing as the old law did. We see that all through government, but that's life. There's been
So-
some chat about care court, and that's important because care court was kind of the first step of this overall effort on the part of the governor to basically hide the limits, hide the homeless through involuntary commitment. And as I mentioned, that has just created a court system to push people through that with, again, no additional resources to actually help them once they are committed. But involuntary commitment's been a big issue over the years. And from my perspective, there are times when involuntary commitment has to happen. Yes, there is a place for it. The problem is primarily that when people are involuntarily commitment, typically it doesn't help them. They're just being diverted for a bit, and then no one size fits all. People generally, involuntary commitment is what a lot of people call medical incarceration. And just like criminal incarceration, typically what happens with criminals when they go to jail is they're not really rehabilitated. They work out, get stronger, they read the law library and get smarter, and then they come out and we have stronger, smarter criminals. They're not really helped per se by the system. And in terms of involuntary commitment, that is often the same. I wouldn't say always, because the people that work in these facilities, a lot of them are wonderful people that are really trying to help, but they're just not given the resources needed to give the proper care, and the system really doesn't work for that. So yes, there are sometimes you have to do interventions with that, with people in severe mental health crises, but we need a better answer than just putting more people into these warehouses. So that's the connection between care court and Prop 1. And there are a couple of other bills. One was to lower the bar for getting people committed, therefore pushing more and more people into involuntary commitment, et cetera. So
That was
anyway,
SB
we're wondering about
43.
care court. That's
Yeah.
how it's connected.
Paul, I wanna lift up some stuff. The when this first all started, we brought up the fact that, you know, have you gone through it with Gavin and his crowd? And it was, no, and you had brought it up before, oh, we're doing it for them. I was in on some of those first meetings. We all have to realize that this is his foundation to become president in 4 years. Sacramento just removed a bunch of people from Cesar Chavez Park so Leo DiCaprio could do a movie. They went and slapped, you know, flyers on tents and said, "Get out, we're going to film a movie." You know, it's always, if we can get him out of sight, you know, Gavin did that in San Francisco when he brought President Xi over for the parade. We just have to be more visible. And I know that we're a grassroots organization and we don't have a lot of money. But if we can get in front of a camera, in front of places, and talk about it, many of the Capitol Police could not say anything to me during the protest. But they did come back and say, good luck with what you're doing. You know, we can't tell you we're for it or against it, but good luck with what you are doing here. We really, really appreciate it. And when they weren't in their uniforms, it was, you know, we're not voting for this. This is wrong. So what do we do moving forward, Paul? That our next webinar is on Thursday and it's geared. Emily and Latanya are going to host that, and it's going to be about how this affects people of color. But we just have to get the word out and get more people involved, or getting people who will do a video why they oppose Proposition 1. And I'm going to mute my computer now, but thanks for listening.
I'm going to an event that Mrs. Sandoval is hosting tonight, Journey for Justice here in Merced County. I'm going to be asking some people, and I have some flyers that I printed out that I'm going to be passing out.
Thank you.
I just saw there's a note in the chat. Richard says Pure Services will be impacted and go away if this bill passes. I'd say funding for them, for the most part, it's going to be vastly reduced. I don't think it's going to be completely eliminated, but certainly very heavily impacted. The group that I co-founded a few years ago, Depression and Bipolar Support Alliances of California, doesn't get any money. It doesn't get any MHSA money. So the organizations that work outside of MHSA can still do some work, but it's going to be vastly decreased. A lot of the organizations that do the kind of work that DBSA does, they are getting some grants here and there through MHSA funding, and I expect those are going to go away. So the whole concept of peers helping peers, peer support is a huge subject, and I'll talk with anybody about it forever because I believe in it so much. But peer support is essentially it's like talk therapy without a power differential. It's kind of like 12-step groups in a way, if you're familiar with AA or SA or NA or whatever. You know, people get together and they help each other, but without somebody saying you should do this or you should do that, or I'll write you a prescription and call me in the morning or anything like that. It's just incredibly effective to get people to open up and talk, that sometimes they won't talk with a psychiatrist about their mental health issues because they're afraid they're going to get committed. And honestly, some psychiatric associations have been supporting this initiative because I guess that's what they want to do. I don't know. Emily, that's a beautiful piece of art. Thank you. Yes, Richard, it's about educating our friends, family, community, newspapers. We've been meeting with a lot of editorial boards, talking with a lot of reporters. Some of that is in the links that I put in the chat. And some of those reports, certainly the the article by Marin County Confidential has a lot of information on Prop 1. I talked with her. Many of us have spoken with the TV stations, et cetera. But yes, you know, I mean, my plug is there's contact information right there on the screen. Feel free to reach out. I did this PowerPoint myself, so I didn't want to put anybody else's phone number on it, but what the heck? I'm a masochist. What can I say? I'll take phone calls. But feel free to reach out. The prop1no.com, that is the campaign's website. Actually, I'm going to paste these into the chat as well. So I don't know if, can you folks copy and paste from the chat? If you can, you know, feel free to do that. If you can't, just get my email. Actually, this Californians Against Prop 1 at Gmail, requested to that email. I think that's probably the best bet. But I'll say.
Yeah, and then we'll have a link for the recording.
Oh, that's right. We're gonna also
Shortly.
do recording, so you'll be able to do that as well. Okay. Any other? Let's see, Michael and Chris. I don't know. Do you have any comments or questions or anything? Like to continue the discussion? Don't want to leave anybody out here. If not, that's fine. I hope this gave you some information. Yes, as I said before, this is, you know, we are members of the Californians Against Proposition 1. I don't think that I really have to give you a whole lot of information about the people supporting it because they're spending $16 million to let you know what they think and to try to get you to do it. So you'll be able to see their arguments, and I hope you balance those arguments against what you've heard and what we've talked about today, and hopefully realize that it's as with any campaign, you can't trust everything you read. Facts. Emily says she's not in touch with too many reporters. It's challenging to be a traumatized patient and advocate at the same time. It is. And people, for example, there's a woman named Karen who works with Mental Health America of California, who's just amazing, but she just doesn't feel comfortable doing debates. She'll talk with reporters, she'll talk with, you know, some people in the field, but she doesn't feel, she's not an argumentative person. Neither am I normally. I sometimes make an exception for this, but I don't feel like I'm a good arguer. I don't like fights. You know, make love, not war. You know, I'm from that generation.
Arguing sometimes is hard, especially when you can't change someone's mind. And I mean, Tanya's already been able to be in the same room as Eggman, and I'm like, wow, props to you, LaTanya,
Yes.
for like being head on with the very person who was one of the authors of
Yeah.
Prop 1. So, you know,
I've been online with them, but yeah,
Yeah.
Tanya's my hero.
Mhm.
Gloria has her
Yeah.
hand up.
Thank you. You know, I wasn't able to capture the difference between what the Mental Health Services Act funding now. Is there an exact like shifting over of the monies, or are they giving less money than what has been in place?
Let me go back to that slide really quickly.
Okay.
There we go. There's no additional money and going to the Mental Health Services Act. Or to that fund to do this work. That's one of Gavin's big deals is I'm going to solve the homeless problem and I'm not going to raise taxes. Well, whatever, you know,
Yeah.
they're not getting any additional money into this program. He is doing a bond issue. And as much as, you know, they always say, oh yeah, you know, he's not raising taxes, he's selling bonds, but who do you think's paying for the bonds? It's the taxpayers. So whether
Yeah.
it comes out of future funding or whether it's coming out of it right now, and there's a deficit this year, this coming year, coming up in the budget for the
Yeah.
state, and I don't know. Is he going to try to raise taxes to deal with that? We don't know. But the bottom line is, it's all your kids are going to pay for this.
But Paul, I know you mentioned the billionaire tax. I'd like to, try to become better familiar with that, what it is. And
Sure.
I did want to just say something. I had a call from a local junior high school teacher or middle school teacher. They had a lockdown here in our community, one of the schools, and she was so angry that there's been no protocols, no follow-up, there's no debrief. Maybe today, this happened, I think Thursday, but she was real dissatisfied. Like they were like taking it as a joke, but they actually did. They did arrest a minor, a person. I don't know. They're not saying. I don't know yet if there were any guns involved or anything. But I think we have to change that mentality of these kinds of tragedies all happen elsewhere, not in our community. But I really think that, many people are leaving the teaching field because they're afraid, they're afraid. So I just, I want to share that because I think, we're all connected in one way or other. And sometimes it's not very easy. I mean, especially I deal with a lot of Spanish speaking people, and many times don't know where to refer them that they could actually get services in their own language. Thank you.
Sure. I'm putting into the chat window a PDF of this presentation. It is still in development. This is the first one we're doing. We'll do better in the future, but it does have all the links and everything in it. So if you want to download that from the chat window, you can do that as well. In terms of the millionaires tax, I know I reference billionaires because they're the ones that are really putting most of the money into this tax, but it is anyone who makes $1 million or more per year gets the additional taxation. And that's to the California income tax. Is that what you're asking about? Okay. I read your lips and you said yes, even though you're muted.
Yes, I was. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. I am not a good lip reader, although I'm going to have to become one because I have hearing loss. Richard, hi.
Question. So what if the scenario is the Prop 1 does not happen to pass? My understanding is that the rules cannot be changed because it's a ballot initiative, that the state's basically stuck. Is that correct, Paul?
Here's my understanding. The original Prop 63 allowed for the legislature to make amendments to it as long as it fulfilled the initial purposes of the MHSA, of Prop 63. And there have been several of those changes. They've kind of raided little bits of money for different programs from time to time. Who's responsible for training the mental health coaches? That's a good point. Anyway, sorry, I was distracted by a text in the chat box. Now with this, it's my understanding, and there's some disagreement on this right now, as to whether the legislature can make changes after this is put in. In the initial legislation, it indicated that none of this could be changed without taking it back to the voters. So this new Prop 1 would change things and make it much, much more difficult to change things and to clean it up or fix it or put in the details or do all that in the future. Instead, what's going to happen is that a lot of this, because it's left a little bit vague, it's being left to the Department of Healthcare Services to make future changes, which means that neither the legislature nor the voters will really have much input into what happens. I think that's what you're asking. So I think that's what you're asking. Is that what you wanted to know, Richard?
Yes, but it's my understanding that if it does not pass, that the state can't make changes unless that actual bill passes with the housing bond.
Okay, right. So if it doesn't pass, and this is where it gets a little bit more complicated, and I'm not an expert in this. I wish we had Claire Courtright with us. She's great at all this, but it's my understanding there are certain parts of the bills that are going into effect, but not going on to Prop 1, because there are only parts of those, most of those bills need voter approval to overhaul the MHSA and do the bond. But there are certain parts of it that will go into effect anyway. And on the top of my head, I don't know exactly what that is. But
And
if
my understanding with those parts that you're referring to is the behavioral health dollars from MHSA to behavioral health.
right,
That's my understanding with the plain language.
yeah, that won't happen if Prop 1 is defeated. All of the big pieces of the bond and the transfer of these billions of dollars, the bulk of that will not happen if Prop 1 is defeated. But there are some technical things that went into law, I guess, went into law January 1 or something like that. But anyway, some of the smaller pieces went into law already outside of Prop 1, because it wasn't necessary to give those pieces to a ballot initiative and get voter approval. Thanks for asking these questions, because these are things I've been thinking about, and I don't have all the answers, to be sure.
Yeah,
we-
I know you don't, but if I would recommend that you would contact Claire Corhart at Cal Voices.
Yes.
She's an attorney and is against, Prop 1. Cal Voices is against Prop 1. She would be able to give you any further information that you may need, that she may be able to give her insight, her technical, professional opinion on those answers that you may not have.
Yeah, I speak with Claire at least once a week. So do not doubt that I will be consulting her on a couple of these things just to get her take on exactly what will and won't, what will go into effect regardless of this particular initiative. And she is amazing. She is she's actually the person that that was referenced to the fact that Senator Eggman, refused to be in the same room with her because she challenges Eggman all the time.
Oh, well,
I love her.
Is
you're
there
you're a politician, get over it.
Exactly. Well, I mean, one of the problems, and this is kind of just an opinion thing for me myself. One of the problems with single party governance is that the legislators and the people who are in power really don't have to debate anybody because they have all the power. Not that I think that we should go, I mean, we shouldn't be all Republican, we shouldn't be all independent, we shouldn't be all Democrat, we shouldn't be all socialist, we shouldn't be all anything, because that sort of system results in this type of thing where the governor and the leadership in the party can jam down pretty much anything they want without real debate. And Eggman's not used to being challenged. She goes onto the Senate floor and it's all her buddies, they have a super majority in the Democrat Party in the Senate, so she doesn't really have to debate these things. When she gets challenged, she doesn't like it. Are there any peers that I would say no? Actually, I know the governor listens to Amari a little bit, but he doesn't.
He just shudders a lot.
Exactly.
I mean, he gets a nervous tick when my name gets brought up. He doesn't like the fact that I think of him as just another human being. Nobody in power. Gloria asked, is there an expiration date for MHSA funding? I don't think there is until and if Proposition 1 passes,
Well,
because it was done in
2004.
2000
The funding
Or-
stream itself, the millionaire's tax is in perpetuity until it's repealed by the voters. So if the voters got together and decided we're not having the millionaire's tax anymore, then all MHSA or BHSA, after Prop 1, if it's passed, That continues forever until it's repealed. What this does is not eliminate, well, they're changing it to BHSA. They're not eliminating the funding, they're just using it for things other than, they're using a lot of it for things other than mental health.
I'm gonna take Emily's question. Have any governors ever acknowledged Sally Zimmerman's efforts? Our California governor has not. I do know there was one on the East Coast in Ohio that did. So I miss Sally. I really wish that Sally was here.
Me too.
So that's pretty
Sally
much
was
why
amazing.
I do what I do.
Yep.
So Sally always told me, says, get in good trouble or, be good at, be good. And I said, I want to be good at it. I said, I don't want to be good. I said, I want people to think and educate themselves. And that's what I got from Sally. So thanks for the question.
We are here standing on the shoulders of people like Sally Zinman and Rusty Seelix, who actually wrote the MHSA originally. Karis, what about Karis? Emily?
What about, Karis is doing some things for, opposition on Proposition 1. But, I have not been able to get a commitment from Karis. So, and she's a board member for Disability Rights California.
And Sally Zinman, for those of you who haven't heard of her, she was the executive director of CAMPRO, the California Alliance of Mental Health Peer Run Organizations. I think I had that right, for many years, and has been a real leader in the peer movement for peer support and the recovery model for mental health.
Paul, thank you for putting the PowerPoint together. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to Thursday's webinar. Before Latanya left, she asked if we could have translation for their webinar. And I said, if you can have somebody who will donate their time to do it, we can do that. We do not have $350 an hour to hire a professional translator for a webinar.
That said, I could probably go back and do like Google Translate. I know a little bit of Spanish. And I could, along with Google Translate, I could probably translate most of this PowerPoint, and we can maybe post that. But yeah, to do a full-fledged transcript of the webinar would be, well, let's just say the governor has 1,000 times as much money as we do.
Right. We can take it into Canva and translate it now,
Okay.
which we didn't have before, but I think Latanya was interested in having an English and a Spanish channel in their presentation on Thursday. And we just do not have the funding to do that. And I suggested they reach out and find someone who is willing to donate their time to be in a translation channel for those that are only Spanish speakers. That's all I can do.
Sure. Excellent.
But thank you all.
Everybody for coming. We'll be
We're
doing,
gonna shut the recording down.
yep. We'll be doing 4 more of these over the next, before the, at least that's our plan, to do 4 more of them before the actual election day. This Thursday.